Welcome to Get Over It, the Consciousness Transforming Podcast for exceptional 21st century living. Today, folks, we have a very interesting show. We're going to be talking over the Consciousness Transforming Podcast for exceptional 21st century living. Folks, we have a very interesting show today. We're going to be speaking with Anuraga, and I screwed that up, but Anuraga Dayal Gulati about her new book, and that is Heal Your Ancestral Roots. We haven't really spoken that much about ancestral roots on this show, and it's something that I feel everyone needs to get in touch with, because we came from ancestors, and you can work through your issues and see where you're going in your present life, plus actually put some energy into a future life by understanding your ancestral roots. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through the blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that's been holding you back, but you guys know I always ask, are you truly ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief system. A bit about me for my new listeners: intuitive since birth. I'm a third generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting-edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I'm the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind-body-spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. My clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information while assisting them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website, and that's MoniqueChapman.com. And I invite you to like me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm no longer on Twitter, so don't even look for me there. My guest today, Anu Dayal Gulati, is an energy practitioner and transformational coach with a PhD in economics. After 15 years in finance and academia, she began a new path of helping people release the path and reclaim their power. Trained in flower essence therapy and family constellation therapy, she lives in Boston, Massachusetts, and you can check her out at her website, and that is floweressencehealing.com. floweressencehealing.com. That's all one word. Welcome, Anu.
Hi, Monique. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And you definitely got my name right.
Okay.
I just have a quick correction to make. The website is healyourancestralroots.com after the book.
Oh, okay, because the one I got from your publicist was floweressencehealing.com. Okay, folks, so scratch that one and go with healyourancestralroots.com. You know, it's Mercury retrograde while we're recording this, and if it will go wrong, if it can go wrong, it does go wrong. Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, thank you for agreeing to be on the show. Now, you have a PhD in economics. What changed your path from that path and the academic path to more of the spiritual path and discovering your ancestral roots?
Well, I grew up in India, Monique, so the spiritual part was sort of, I guess, in my blood, but I think I needed to get rid of the part that was not working for me anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when it happened in a pretty traumatic way, because I had a health problem and I went into the ER for it, and I came out thinking, this is it. This is like behind me. I'm going to get back to life as usual. But then one night out of nowhere, I had to go back into the ER. Mm-hmm. And I remember starting to feel a little scared. Like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. And I came out. But when I had to go in for the third time, that's when I started to feel a sense of despair sweeping over me. I started to have this feeling like, I don't know if I'm going to be okay. And I could tell
Mhm.
the doctors that they didn't really know what was going on. But I had a very dear friend, and she was into alternative healing, which I wasn't at that time. But she came to see me in the hospital, and she said, to me, Anu, how many times are you going to go through this? What is it going to take for you to change? And I remember her words like really sort of, they hit me in the gut.
Mhm.
And I literally willed myself out of the hospital. And I started to explore alternative methods of healing. And I discovered like a Chinese medicine doctor who was amazing. And I
Mhm.
also discovered flower essences. And those two things together, they not only saved my health, but they changed the trajectory of my life. And what I recognized, much later was how important hope is in our life. And
Mhm.
that's when I decided to leave economics, academia, and to start on this new journey. And that's what led me to do today, because to the work I do today, because I want people to know that they're never powerless, that they can create change. And that's what I really do now.
Well, I know it's interesting because you said you weren't feeling well, you go to the doctor, you go to the ER, and they really didn't hear you. And today, right now, today, the doctors are not listening. They don't hear us. They have their 10, 15 minutes and they make up their mind as soon as they look at us when we walk in the door, and they just let it go. I was speaking to a client yesterday who had injured her hand. She went into the doctor saying that it hurt. It had been hurting for a few days. The doctor said, "Oh, no, it's sprained." So they gave her one of those arm slings and said, "Don't use it for a while." And
Mhm.
6 weeks later, it's still hurting just as bad. And you know what? She went to a different doctor, demanded to have x rays, and her hand was broken.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So I hear you loud and clear when you say they're not listening. And I applaud you for paying attention to your intuition with, no, this isn't working. I got to find extra help.
Yes. And Monique, it's like we need something. We really need sometimes a punch in the gut to
Mm-hmm.
see things differently or do something differently.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I was just carrying on the same way I was, this low grade unhappy, but what, I don't know any different. I don't know what to do. And how many of us just spend our lives in that way?
All of us, because we're programmed to a certain degree, and then we can wake up or choose not to wake up. Now, in your book, you say that you went through a dark night of the soul. So explain to people what a dark night of the soul is and what was yours.
So I guess it's the path, it's the time of your life when you just don't see light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know how things could be different. You just sort of feel like maybe you've given up hope. The obstacles just seem huge, they seem numerous, and you don't see a way out. And I think I went through that work because I had actually been working in Washington, D.C. I thought that
Mhm.
was my dream job. I was really happy. I had colleagues that I loved. I had my friends. I mean, I was just like, it was years and years of hard work doing the PhD. And now here was my dream job. I got to fly all over the world. I got to, meet, people who were so-called important. And then
Mhm.
I had to leave that because I had my son, my husband and I had to start commuting, and it was just getting too much. So I finally quit to follow my husband to sort of get some work-life balance, and I went to Chicago, and that's where I got really sick. But before that, I was just unhappy because my friends, my support structure had shifted. I didn't really want to be in academia, and
Mhm.
I was unhappy. I was resentful. I was all of those things that we face when we go through a transition we don't want, and yet at the same time I had to keep functioning. Mother, daughter, wife, volunteer in the school, go to work, like all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's finally when I had this health crisis that really was like, what am I going to do? What is going to happen?
Mm.
And that's really the reorientation of my life that began.
Absolutely wonderful, because sometimes it takes a 2x4 upside your head to get your attention. Sometimes it's a boulder, but you did it before all of that can happen. So I congratulate you. Now, the title of your book is, Heal Your Ancestral Roots. So how does all of what you did in the past bring you to this point of being able to heal your ancestral roots? First of all, what is it, and how do we attempt to do that?
Yeah, so ancestral roots, Monique, it's a concept that's familiar in a lot of Eastern traditions, um, in the Native American traditions, and in every other, in Africa, Europe. We we know that we have days days of the year, we have periods of the year where we honor our ancestors, and that's
Mhm.
something very much missing in North America. It even exists in South America. But why do we do that, and who are our ancestors? So at least in the Eastern traditions and the Native American traditions, I know that our ancestors are not just our parents and grandparents, but it includes those who came up to 7 generations before us. And if you think about it, that's 252 mothers and fathers that needed to have been born for you to exist here today. And then we ourselves are the ancestors of 7 generations to come. And our actions on this earth plane affect 7 generations to come. So
Mhm.
why do we honor our ancestral roots? It's because our ancestors, we are the part of them that live on this earth. And when there is something unresolved in the lineage, we take on a piece of that to heal or to resolve. And when we do that, we not only heal ourselves, we heal those who came before us, and we
Mhm.
also heal those who come after us. So, this work is really valuable work. It's really important and sacred work that we are doing.
Mm. So, what lessons can we learn from working with our ancestors? And how do you know what generation to work with, or can you work with all of them simultaneously?
Well, a lot of times we lose track of, we might know our parents or grandparents, but we don't really know before that. Some
Mm-hmm.
do know they, can go, even a couple of centuries back. But for a lot of us, we may or may not know our ancestors. And in a lot of the traditions, there were ways that these were circumvented just simply by honoring all of them. So you just offered prayers for the well being of all your ancestors, going back up to 7 generations. You didn't even necessarily need to know who they are. And
Mm-hmm.
acts of charity, which are common all over the world, in the name of your ancestors, where you acknowledge or you give back what you might have received, whether it's feeding someone, whether it's, donating for a cause, for anything, volunteering somewhere, maybe at a shelter. Those are ways in which we might acknowledge what we have received from the lineage and give back in ways to the world around us. So you don't necessarily need to know any of your ancestors. You can see
Mm-hmm.
it as an offering to your ancestors.
So, how do you know that you're connecting with the right people?
Well, if you look and you are connecting, because when I started doing this work, my mentors would tell me, when you walk in with all of your ancestors around you, their energy is around you. And I used to think, I don't really believe this. Like, I find it hard to believe. But what I have noticed is, when you look at patterns in your life, things
Mm-hmm.
that repeat in your life, there's probably an element of this happened to someone before you. And, for instance, if you have a series of bad bosses at work or colleagues or things are happening, it's probably this might have happened to someone before you.
Mm-hmm.
And your ancestors need you because you are part of their DNA. We think of death as maybe somebody just died or disappeared, but actually no, it's a sort of veil. We may not really see them,
Mm-hmm.
but their energy, their family energy field, which includes up to all these generations, is surrounding us. It's holding us. If you have inherited a sense of humor, the ability to dance, write, sing, or have a green thumb, or be good with your hands, or a scientific mind, those are all inherited from your ancestors, and they want to evolve. But what happens a lot of times, they can get stuck close to the earth's plane and they cannot evolve. So they need you to pray for them, for their well-being, or work, doing something for others that allows them to evolve. So trust me, your ancestors are hanging around you. They're not they're not going to somebody else, but they want us to do the work.
Okay, so they want us to do the work. So it's like a transgenerational pattern that you were talking about. So if you are somebody in this lifetime who is extremely well off or extremely poor, or very talented in the spiritual arts, all of that is coming from the ancestors. But if your ancestors were struggling, okay, especially financially, how do you break that chain so that it doesn't have to be a struggle for the future to come? Sometimes it feels like we're stuck in it. We can't, pull our feet out of the tar.
Yeah. And, Monique, that's a great question, because a lot of times this idea of, poverty consciousness may not necessarily relate only to money. It can relate to this feeling of lack in multiple areas of your life. And where does it come from? And one of the things they talk a lot about in healing is about the energy of gratitude, because gratitude is a receiving energy. When you open yourself up to gratitude, you open yourself up to receiving. And a lot of times we get stuck in bitterness or anger, and that closes ourselves off to receiving. And so you talked about, the BS, the belief systems. What belief systems are we carrying? Like, do I deserve a good life? Like, do I deserve my needs to be met? Do I deserve more than my needs to be met? Like, what are the subconscious belief systems that we're carrying? And where did we get them from? It's interesting because someone told me, in spiritual communities, there's a lot of poverty consciousness because it's kind of like it goes at odds with being spiritual. So there we go. That's a limiting belief system in and of itself.
Yes. Okay.
So we have these belief systems, and some of which this is all conditioning, whether you inherit it from your parents, whether you pick it up from the community, the neighborhood, the family circumstances you're in. But our task is to allow ourselves to release the belief systems that don't serve us. And I feel like, there's an African proverb that really captures it beautifully, because it says, when you cut your chains, you free yourself. When you cut your roots, you die. And I think this is honoring the tension between what did I come from? Who did I come from? Can I just honor and accept what I came from, but release the feeling of being a victim and actually forge my own path and create my own destiny? It's not easy, but when you're aware and when you start to live with intention, you can actually start to make that journey from one to the other.
Okay. And you're on your path because that's your particular path. I get it. Okay. In your book, you also talk about family constellations. What are they and how do they help us?
Yeah. So, if the journey that we're trying to make is from our ancestors to our individuality, in physical terms, that's the journey from the head to the heart. And it's really, we can intellectually understand something, but then to actually shift at the level of the heart can be much more challenging. And
Mhm.
family constellation therapy, it's, they use the word therapy, but it's not really therapy. It's based on the idea that family is an energy field, and your ancestors want to facilitate healing. And so
Mhm.
in family constellation work, it's a group process. You go and you sit in a group. It's like sitting in a circle. You know how kids sit in a circle, like in kindergarten or something.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
like you sit in a circle, and the space inside is empty. And somebody, a client, comes in with a problem that they want to solve, and the facilitator will say, "All right, choose someone to represent you, and then choose someone to represent maybe your mother or your father." And so
Mhm.
people from the circle are chosen to represent the client or the client's parents or children or whoever might be relevant.
Mhm.
They step into the circle. They start to pick up the emotions and even the words, the body language of the family members that they are being asked to represent. And this is because if family is an energy field, then that information is available. So, bizarre as it sounds, when you start to see someone in the circle, they may be standing or sitting or behaving kind of maybe the way your mother does. And
Mhm.
so the client, when they're watching this, it's like, it's almost like seeing a play or a movie of their life, and they look at it and it gives them an insight into their situation. And, an insight or perception into your situation then starts the process of allowing you to shift. So that's
Mhm.
what the constellation does. It offers you an insight or perspective into your situation that you're struggling with so that you can start the process of unwinding it or shifting it or healing it.
Okay. You also work with flower essences, and how does that help with the work of um, assisting or supporting your ancestors, both past and future? How can we utilize those essences to really get um, a grip, I guess, on who they were, so that we can understand more of who we are?
Yeah, and all ancestral healing is releasing the feeling that you're a victim of what came before you. And so when, just as family constellation is an insight or perspective on your situation and a sort of heart opening, similar
Mm-hmm.
flower essences facilitate that heart opening, because if you're struggling with anger or bitterness, particular flower essences will shift those emotions of anger, bitterness, shame, guilt. And once those emotions start to shift, then you can start to let go of this feeling of victimhood, and you can start to then live life. You can, as your podcast so aptly says, you can start to get over it. It's a tool to help you get over it, get over whatever happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the get over it is like a releasing. It's not like the harsh you get over it, although sometimes a little kick in the rear might help someone. But the intent is to release so that you can move forward. And tapping into your ancestral roots would definitely help you release what is no longer needed and help you move forward. And then I think in that way, you're also helping to pre-program future generations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like you said, in the getting over it, what we're doing is we're learning the lessons that the
Mhm.
ancestors want to teach us, how we shift. And that's what's happening. And that's what's creating the change, because we no longer need to repeat the patterns to hear the message of the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Like my going into the ER, like, what is it going to take me to change? How many times do I need to go through this? So we learn our lessons, and then we release the pattern.
Yeah, when we are truly ready to release, because my goodness, sometimes you just keep hitting your head up against the same wall. I shared with you before the show, I've worked with a client for 5 years. They're still working on the same thing because they, for whatever reason, they're stuck and, either afraid to open up, afraid to move forward, or just comfortable in that velvet rut. Because sometimes we just get real comfortable in the state we're in. It doesn't mean it's a good place, right? But
Yeah.
we get comfortable.
Yes. And, this is why I like the flower essences so much, because they allow us they work very gently and very subtly, but they allow us to shift because, and this is what about, this is the message about the emotions. They're working at the emotional level. We are constantly getting the message that our emotions are not valid. Either we get that message from childhood, if you don't stop crying, like, I just watch what I do, or like, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, get over it, don't bring your problems to work. Like, the message just continues on and on and on. And the message is always, we human beings are rational beings and who maybe have emotions. But if we flipped it and we are emotional beings who rationalize, what might have happened or what's happening, then we can start to focus on the message our emotions are sending us, and that's an invitation to the healing process.
Okay. In your book, you talk about a Vedic ritual of Tarpanan. Tarpanan. What is that, and how can we use it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because in a lot of Western traditions, when they looked at working with the ancestors, they called it ancestor worship. And
Mm-hmm.
Roberto Villoldo is a Cuban medical anthropologist, and it's really interesting because when he started working in South America, he realized that there were these altars, ancestral altars, and he said, they're not for ancestral worship. They
Mm-hmm.
are so that you know where your ancestors are, so that they're
Mm-hmm.
not running amok, ruining your life. And so creating an ancestral altar was one way of anchoring the energy of your ancestors as a way to not pray to them, but pray for them. And then when you pray for them, for the evolution of their souls, you can ask for their blessings. Tarpanam, which is this Vedic, which I adapted, which is the way we do it in India, is just simply a prayer saying, I pray for the lineage to be in peace. I pray for it to be in harmony. I pray for it to, from that space, like, to bless me and all of those who are alive in the current generations. So I just adapted the prayers and rituals that we do in India to simplify
Mm-hmm.
living in the West, because I didn't have access to the priests or the prayers or the rituals, so I just adapted
Mm-hmm.
it.
Oh, okay. And in your book, you also talk about a framework that you called HOME. What is it and how does it work?
Yeah. Also, a lot of times we are looking for, relationships are what really bring meaning and value to our life. So if we have good relationships, we're happier, we're contented. But a lot of our problems come from the fact that we are searching for something from others and then we're disappointed. So
Mm.
in my book, what I say is, this framework that I'm offering home is, when you restore connection to yourself, you can let go of judgment and expectation of others, and you can enter into all your relationships in a much more fulfilling way. So home is H is for honoring your ancestors. O is for observing your emotions. M is to magnify your spiritual connection. And E is to engage with Mother Earth. And so I just want to talk about the last two. The
Okay.
law of karma is something that is in play all over. We know, as you sow, so you reap. We've heard it said so many times. But along with karma, if we stop to notice, there is grace present in many different ways, in many little ways. And that is why the act of observing it allows us to see how we're being taken care of. So magnifying our spiritual connection gives us the strength and the resilience to deal with setbacks and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And E is to engage with Mother Earth. I mean, the earth is our true mother, mother of all mothers, mother of all fathers. And we lose this connection with the earth. But if we can turn to the earth for nurturance and support, then we start to feel again more connected with ourselves. And think about when you are upset about something and you go for a walk and you come back and you feel better. It's because the earth actually absorbs our toxic emotions and toxic energies. So if we can do that, we can start to create the space to reconnect with ourselves. So framework home is what allows us to reconnect with ourselves.
Okay. So I want to go back to the ancestors for a moment to make sure that I understand the connection. So we have the ancestors, of course, they've made their transition. And once they've made their transition, they still have studies or whatever, because the soul keeps growing. So if we work with the ancestors in our present incarnation on Earth, we help them heal and they help us heal. And by doing that, we can help future ancestors. Do I have that kind of right?
Yes, because as you said, Monique, our ancestors who have passed on, so when they want to make amends for things they have done. They want to make amends because transgenerational burdens are the energy of unresolved emotions. And so they want to make amends because the legacy of hurt or betrayal or addiction or whatever it is, as it continues, they want to make amends, but they cannot. And if they help in this process of making amends, then they themselves can release some of the lower energies and start to evolve and move up. So we then become the instruments through which they can actually start to make amends. We become a tool for them.
Okay, and then that moves everything forward. Okay, I've got a weird question to ask, and it just came up, so sorry. In today's world, we have so many mass shootings and this, that, and the other. So the people who commit those horrendous crimes, are they perhaps acting out something that their ancestors did previously, or is it something else altogether? Do you think? I know we have no pat answers.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Monique, because, when there is trauma in the family, whether it's a big T trauma or a small t, a lot of the people who have done these shootings, are disturbed in some way. What trauma does is there is a loss in the expression of love in a family. Somehow, love gets lost in the way it is expressed. And there is this feeling of hurt. And people, there was a therapist very early on in the 1950s and 60s. He came from Hungary. And he discovered when someone feels so hurt, they want to take it out on someone else. If they if they cannot, get amends or repair work or whatever, however they choose to do it, they want to take it out on someone else. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing very troubled people take out this hurt, anger, frustration, sadness on people who are completely not responsible for for causing any of it. I'm not saying that's 100% true, but in general. So we are seeing it. So this is really a call to see what is going on in our system in terms of feelings of isolation, anxiety, depression, loneliness, and starting to see what do we need to do to create and shift it. Stronger family bonds. What do we need to do to create like healthy families, healthy parenting, healthy loving, healthy expression of emotions? What do we need to do to create all of that?
Mm-hmm. Do you think we still have time to get back to a place of more balance where there's more love and more respect for the human life, for other people in general?
Well, I think sometimes, when we read the news, it's really depressing, Monique. But there's also, you look at so much work people are doing, even the podcast you're doing. It's, to send a message of hope, to send a message of here are the tools, here's what can happen. So we're seeing, this little flames or light that is being lit everywhere. And people starting to practice that, and hopefully it becomes big enough. I mean, if you look at the arc of history, like we see things like, imperialism, colonialism giving way to something else, the rise of, suffrage, voting, just changes keep happening. And we're seeing more and more now a discussion of trauma with the general public. It wasn't there before. So I think there's always, things that are happening, moving, and things that are bringing things to the surface. So it's like an interplay of forces.
Okay.
But we need hope to live on, Monique. So we have to be optimistic.
Yeah, because if not, I mean, it just kind of like kills everything, and that's not a good thing. Now, when we go to your website, healyourancestralroots.com, what are we going to find there?
So on my website, well, one, you can reach me through the website, but the second is on my website, I offer a PDF that you can download, and it lists the 10 key flower essences that help you shift your relationships. And I put together that list based on my experiences with my clients. And so I put together that list. And it also tells you what's the difference between flower essences and essential oils, how to create your custom bottle and take it, where you can buy it, etc. So that's what I offer on the website.
Okay, so folks, do check it out. There is a wealth of information there, and there's always information to learn. Our time has gone so quickly, Anu. Could you give us a pearl of wisdom that you could leave with us today?
I would love, Monique, for your listeners to reconnect with themselves. That's the most important thing they can do. We are so often given the message not to trust ourselves, not to trust our judgment. But I think that's where we all need to start, to go back to trusting ourselves, reclaiming our power. And when we do that, we can start to live life from a different place. We can start to create the life we want. So my message to your listeners would be to reconnect with themselves. That's the most important thing they can do.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for being my guest today as we collectively get over it. And everyone, please remember that the most important choice that you can make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of healing your ancestral roots. Abundant blessings, light and love to all. Agape.